I just saw Allegiant. I had a few problems with it. First of all, I'll start off by saying that this is a review of a person who has read all of the Divergent books. The reason I don't have a copy of Allegiant is because when it came out I was so excited to read it that I actually bought it on ebook. I hate reading ebooks, but I just wanted to read it because I binge read these in like a day each, and I was just so desperate to read it when it came out that I bought it on Kindle, and I don't have a physical copy of it. And I think the only positive I can say about this film is that it fixed some of the negatives of the book. The problem with the book Allegiant was that it just tried to tell such a complex story, and a lot of the time I was just looking at the page thinking, what is going on? And the way they've changed it in Allegiant to try and make it clearer is actually working pretty well. I understand it a lot more watching the film than I did reading the book. So if you've read this book and you're expecting to go and see what is on the page manifested on the screen, that's not what you're going to see. It is different. It is pretty different, but I don't think it's in a bad way. Because let's face it, the book Allegiant was a bit boring. And honestly, so was this film. But I feel like it at least tried to fix some of the problems the book had. That, however, is the only positive. There are so many things I found annoying about this film. First of all, the editing just threw me off so many times. I mean visual editing, I mean sound editing, everything was just off a lot. The weapon sounds, they couldn't decide if they wanted these guns to be quiet or loud, or if they wanted to be like friggin' revolvers, or if they wanted them to be lasers. They couldn't decide, they just kind of did what they wanted whenever there was a gun on screen. They just changed it as they wanted to. Like, there is a moment in this film where there is a headshot. A guy gets hit in the back of the head with an actual bullet. It wasn't like a laser gun, it looked like an actual pistol, and there was no blood. There was no indication that this guy had been hit by anything. And it wasn't just because it was a PG-13 movie that they couldn't put blood and guts into. Like, if they had just cut away, I would have understood. I would have known what they were trying to do. But no, then they zoom out and show this guy after being hit in the head with a bullet, and there is absolutely nothing on his head showing that he's just been shot. There was a moment where Jeff Daniels' character like pulled something out of the wall, and he pulled it really gently, but the sound they used, it just went zip, as if he was ready to like whip it out and fling it across the room like a frisbee, and it just wasn't the right sound at all. The dialogue as well, some of it was just the cheesiest stuff. Caleb, Ansel Elgort, just really got major stick in this film. I don't know if it was just really bad direction or the lines, or whether Ansel Elgort just lost all ability to act when he was in this film, but everything was just off with him. A lot of the script just didn't make sense. There were like little random one-liners that characters would say just to remind you that they were still in the scene, and they just meant nothing. They absolutely meant nothing. There's a bit where Caleb says, "I'm scared," and Christina just says, "Maybe that's for the best." Why? Why is it for the best that he's scared? There was no context. There was no reason for her to say that. It was just random. It didn't make sense. Ultimately, not much happens in this film. There's a lot of just awkward walking shots, awkward conversations that are just empty, scenes that go on for just 5 seconds too long, several times, and just make it so awkward, and I'm just thinking, you could have cut that away. And it would have done nothing, it would have made it better, because I'm just sitting here watching people stare at each other as if one of the actors has forgotten their lines, and then it cuts away. And you're like, oh, well, why was that there in the first place? The CGI was awful. It reminded me of something that belongs on the Sci-Fi Channel, like a TV movie. It was that bad at points. The ships, I don't know what it was, but when they had them from above views, the ships just look like Battletoads to me. And there's a bit where Peter, Miles Teller's character, who, by the way, they've made just so much more likeable than he should be. That character is just the most interesting character in these films, and he's an absolute dickwad in the books. Like, unforgivably a dickwad. And Peter's just like standing, and then a train goes by behind him, and the train looks faker than the friggin' spaceships. Like, you couldn't just like get a real train, or just something that didn't look like a crappy green screen. It just looked awful. There were scenes where they had these like weird bubble things surrounding them, and they were floating all over the place in them, and they just looked like absolute crap. And I'm sorry, I feel like the filmmakers just decided to give Ansel Elgort as many running shots as they could, because of just how weird Ansel Elgort runs. Have you noticed how strange his run is? It's friggin' weird. And the funniest part is when they try and make him run up a wall. If he can't run on the ground, he's not going to be able to run up the wall. I don't feel like any of the characters got developed in any way. One of the things that bothered me the most as a reader of these books was just how much they just ignore Uriah. Uriah is one of the best characters in these books. He didn't have a single line. And they removed a really cool character. There's a character called Kara, who is meant to be the leader of the Allegiant with Joanna. And what they did was they just couldn't be bothered to cast her because they've abandoned so many characters already over the course of this film series, so why bring in another one just to leave her behind? And they just swapped in the actor that plays Uriah. But for no reason. He's just standing there where Kara should be. And it makes no sense. You don't even see his face in these body swap scenes. You just see someone there. And I could tell it's Uriah, but I don't think anyone else could. There's a scene where a villain is like coming at the group and they turn to each other and they just say, "Go." And then it's like the editor forgot to do something to make it look cool because they literally just turn around and start running. And I thought it was in slow motion, and then I realised they're just going up a steep bit of this terrain. They're just stumbling up this tiny bit of terrain. There's no music, there's nothing making it even remotely dramatic in contrast to what we'd just seen when this villain arrived. It just seemed like they forgot to do something. This film was kind of like one massive eye roll for me. I rolled my eyes so many times at this ridiculous scenes and ridiculous things that I just couldn't get my mind around how they thought it was a good idea. There were so many instances where the villains just kind of stood there waiting to be shot or attacked by the characters that we were meant to be rooting for. I was like, this just looks so fake. And to the fact where I notice it when they're just kind of standing around waiting for the person to turn around on cue and shoot at the exact same spot where they're standing. But the problem is they've been standing there for about 5 seconds just waiting with a gun in their hand but doing nothing with it, even though they're under orders to shoot, and they just stand there and wait to be shot. I would give this film a 5 out of 10. And that's kind of being generous, because I wasn't a massive hater of the first 2 films. I mean, they were below average or around average, but I didn't hate them. I thought they were okay. This one just... It's like, if you make below average film adaptations of the better books in the series, what are you going to do when you get to Allegiant? And unfortunately, they didn't do much when they got to Allegiant. They just made it kind of as boring as the book was, which I guess is kind of fitting in a poetic way. Thank you for watching my review of Allegiant. I just did not really like this film. The pacing was off, the sound was off, the editing was off, the lines were off, the script was off, characters were off, just everything was off. And God knows how they're getting another film's worth of material out of this thing, because they easily could have just made this one film. But no, we get the Divergent series Ascendant next summer. What's Ascendant? Who the hell knows? I don't know. So yeah, see you for Ascendant.